everyone, you're very welcome to this week's episode of our Rivalry podcast. You can click like, subscribe and the notifications bell to ensure you don't miss any future videos and updates. This week I'm delighted to be joined by former Limerick hurling manager and Irish Daily Mail columnist Tom Ryan. He's also the star of County Matters on West Limerick 102 and is a Munster rugby and golf enthusiast as well. The last bit is tongue-in-cheek, but more importantly than all that, he's a very good friend of mine. Tom, thanks a million for coming down. Welcome to Cork.
You're welcome, Rory.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
It's been a while, about 3.5 years.
Great to be in Cork. My favourite county
Yeah.
outside of Limerick.
Yeah. Making full advantage of the inter-county travel and restrictions.
Oh, yes. It's great to have things loosening up again and be able to travel and get out. We've been locked down. I'm locked down in Munster since the whole thing started. But I since I'm farming that I'm out of touch really with contact, and it's great to see you. I'm looking forward to doing the program with you, and we've been friends for a good while. And you're a very, very interesting individual, and I'm delighted to be here.
I'm glad someone thinks so anyway. So that's good. I remember the last time we met actually was in the Woodlands in Limerick. I think it was November 2017, before Limerick kicked on and became the dominant force they are now. And I remember we were Kieran Shannon and Michael Keaton at the time, and if we thought 3.5 years later we'd be sitting down talking about how far Limerick are ahead of the chasing pack, I'd say they would have been calling for the men in white coats that night, so it just goes to show how things can change, very fast.
Swings and roundabouts, we had a great night that night. I really enjoyed it. We had a real heart-to-heart discussion, and I'm not a very social person. I don't go out that often, and I enjoyed that night. And the whole ambience of the woodlands and the lads, they were brilliant. And we had a fantastic night. And as you rightly said, if with hindsight now, to know that Limerick are in the leading position that they're in to all Ireland championships, and maybe looking for a third one, and the National League champion and unbeaten in up to this year. It's unbelievable. And it's a great way for Limerick to be like. It's a great position, and it shows you how things can switch, from being an ordinary team to being an exceptional team. And this Limerick team is an exceptional team, Patrick. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. In your column in the Daily Mail, I would recommend anyone to buy the Daily Mail of a Saturday for Tom's column on hurling. I buy it myself. I get Jill to put it into the Tesco shopping list there for online. So that's kind of the biggest compliment I can pay you, Tom, is that I buy the Daily Mail solely for your article,
Thank you, Patrick. That's nice to hear that. But as I get those comments from all over, I get a lot of abuse. Needless to say, and I'm able to take that as well. But there is a great readership to the column of the Saturday, and when the season is over, I get a lot of calls to say, "Why aren't you on the Saturday?" So, but I only cover the hurling and when the season is on, and But I enjoy it, and it gives me a good platform as well for to voice my opinion, and also for to maybe be critical, but at the same time, anyway, if you're positive and that you're not being personal in any way. I love the game of hurling, and I've been at it all my life since I was 4 or 5 years of age. And I wouldn't say that I know it all. Nobody knows all about hurling, but at the same time, I have a fair idea because of my various positions as a player, coach, manager, and as an analyst, down the years. I know a small bit about it anyway.
I think what I really enjoy about the article is that you wouldn't need to have a degree or a master's in coaching or to understand it's written in very much plain terms, and you don't call a spade an agriculture implement. In fairness, you're very direct, and you're very good examples. You use good analogies in the articles, and for anyone who's interested in farming, you definitely give the farming community a good shout out in it as well, and use examples from your daily work as well. So that's refreshing, and it's good to see, and I suppose in a newspaper that, would be kind of mainly, the royal family, would be a lot of articles in the royal family, an expert in the private lives of the royal family since summer started, since I started buying it again. But it's well worth watching there, and it's in the Tesco. It's in the Tesco shopping every Saturday. So I'm not, unlike Dunphy, I'm not sponsored by Tesco Finest, but I'll be very open to a discussion if anyone from Tesco is watching this and would like to sponsor the podcast. That'd be great.
Yeah, well, in answer to your question, the element party and to the what you mentioned, I mean, like I'm self-trained and self-coached myself, because I never, well, unfortunately nowadays, it's the one thing that I regret in Limerick, that we never had a very successful coaching or any kind of coaching system, and I had to develop my own, and like my own system, my own way of doing things, and it's very simple. I'm a very, very straightforward individual, and I actually what I always do and always did was plain, simple, very, very. I mean, hurling isn't a complicated game by any means. It's been made very complicated now with the advent of the laptop and the GPS. Yeah,
these things, like,
yes, and all that, and the actual all these these, like, what you call mind games that they're at, and I don't, as you well know, I mean, from reading and from listening to me, it's not my style, and it's got into a kind of a commercial. I mean, a commercial rhythm like that I think is not going in the right direction. Hence, and not we have plenty of time to talk about it later on. Hence the big debate now, like up to last Sunday night, like about how does hurling stand in an RT, and my next article on Saturday, not giving anything away, will be telling the people in RT and Croke Park a few home throats as well, and which is badly needed now, because we need an alternative view. We don't need to be listening to what Joanne said and like these experts that they have above in the studio. I never saw a degree for hurling yet. I never saw for like getting passed out with a cap and gown with a hurling on it. Like, but so everybody and everyone that coaches have that, a lot of them have their own style. But I would be traditionalist. Like, I saw great coaches in action, not in Limerick, but I saw them in Cork. I saw them in Kilkenny, in Tipperary. And it was the one regret that I had as a young fella growing up, and as a young player, like I regretted that we hadn't a coach that would show me how to be better. I'm not saying that I was great or anything, and I was a very, very ordinary individual, determined hurler on the field for a club since a very young age, but very anxious to succeed. And thank God at the club level we did it, I mean, from very humble beginnings, and I mean humble, like, I mean, I come from a very, very rural area in Ballybrown. It's the parish of Patrickswell. My origins are in both Tipperary and Limerick. My mother is a Limerick woman. She's Coughlin, and that Jim Coughlin now is playing on the Limerick team at the moment. Colin Coughlin, he's my cousin, and he's we're the one family, and so the tradition is there. My father came from Clonalty in Tipperary, a hurling stronghold. He wasn't much of a hurler himself. He spent a lot of his younger days up in the north, up in Antrim. And so he came to Patrickswell, and he was a founder member of the Patrickswell Club, which was back in 1945, around that period of time when they got together. Because Ballybrown had been, although it was the one parish, Patrickswell is the larger portion of the parish and the more wealthier portion. As we were down in the bank of the Shannon there, water and rushes like as all we ever saw. And so, like, I mean, Patrickswell were formed in 1945. My father was one of the founder members of 6 or 7 there that founded that club. And it's history now, the actual the success of the club and the continued success of the club and the work to do. And it's hurling. It's a hurling area. Patrickswell wouldn't let a hurling football inside the door, inside the gate. Neither would Ballybrown. We would have won, although we did win Munster championships in football. But it's a hurling area. That area there around that part of Limerick would be Mungret, Ballybrown, Patrickswell, Crome, Cracora, back into Kildamo. Pure natural hurling country, and we knew nothing else growing up. And so that would have been my background.
Very good. So today what we're going to discuss was we're just going to have a chat about what it was like growing up, your playing career, and your famous spell as Limerick manager, which has seen a lot of column inches dedicated to it over the years, a very successful period for Limerick hurling. It's good to look back on those times as well, with the way those things are obviously improved for the better now, as things, you know, compared to what it was back then. But before we get stuck into the interview, we're going to do our usual cheers and good health. Great to have you down, as I say.
You're welcome.
We'll take it back to the start, Tom. So where did it all begin for you?
It all began for me like in Ballybrown, you know, back down in a place called Tervo. And as with my cousins, like we were there as young fellas growing up. I haven't a huge memory of growing up, actually, to tell you the truth, in other ways, but I remember hurling well. I mean, we were hurling when we were 4 or 5, and like I had always like I had cousins in McCarthy's who were, you know, they were 4 or 5 of them there, and the Handies were my neighbours as well, and we formed a little group of with our own little team called Tervo, and we used to go and play, you know, all the other townlands around. It was a little, you know, it was a very innovative for its time. I'm talking about the 50s, like, and I was born in 1944, so I'd have been only maybe 10, you know, and we had that, and we played matches all during the summertime when we should have been saving hay and weeding carrots and weeding turnips and things like that. We were always hurling. And we got into more trouble over not being where we should have been than anything else. So we were there with hurling in our hand. My father was a great hurling maker, and he wasn't. He was a great enthusiast, I mean, for hurling but his work was always in the background. And he used to make hurlings for us, and we had hurlings, and we'd go in and we'd play. And it developed from that one, because at that particular time, you see, you had juvenile, you know, under the 8s or 10s, the structures weren't there at all the time, only under 14s then was juvenile. And we started playing with Ballybrown juvenile team, like, and at that particular time, Limerick City was very strong, Cahan, St. Patrick's, you know, Three Streets, they were the big clubs, they were huge clubs, and they still are big clubs, but they're not producing the goods like they used at that time. And we always, and Patrick's were our neighbours, we found ourselves always on the receiving end of fairly big beatings there. We weren't too strong, we hadn't the peak, we were maybe disorganised to effect, and that's not being unjust or being unfair to the club itself, because the club itself was always struggling, like all clubs at the time, you know, we had no field. And at that particular time, we came up through the ranks to minor, it was still the same story in minor. You were in a very strong division, and like in Cork or in any other divisional, and in any other county with divisions with status, like Tipperary or Clare or, you know, any of them, you know, you can find yourself in a very strong division. We were that because we were in the city division, which encompassed the city itself and the big clubs, and we found it always. So we found it very hard to make a breakthrough, and we came up through the ranks minor. And I remember, like, even as a minor, I was always fairly ambitious, because, like, I wanted to develop the game, I wanted to develop my own game. I developed whatever I had as regards, I had a vision that you know, of things that if you work hard, and if you know, I don't know where I got it from, maybe probably my father, but like, it was never taught to me, it just developed in me, and I got the club in. We had a kind of we went to a general meeting of the club, and 4 or 5 of us, I said, we see if we don't get on the junior team here, like, we're going to join all Christians. That would be a cardinal in that time, to leave your club. But we were so, like, determined. We were very young and considered very cheeky as well. Yeah. But at that particular time, so we said anyway. But we kind of were taken on board anyway. They didn't ignore us, and we got on the team. And I became, like, that particular time from 18, I was developing as a player and as a person, and getting, you know, encouraging people. And we were at hurling full time, absolutely full time. You know, we had great times, because we were always struggling for what you call numbers to be, because we'd be only about 9 aside at time with our own little group. But, you know, there were great instances, like, you know, we were playing now Newtown, who were strong numerically, And we went to play on one day, and it was lashing rain. And they Newtown took the option of going into a neighbour's house in Towduff. It was kind of first kind of a dressing room that we had come across. At that particular time, everybody tugged out under the white thorn bush at the end of the field. Or maybe if the cars were there were scarce, okay, maybe a van or something, but there was no clubhouses or showers anyway. I can assure you that. But at the same time, I remember we went dinner and they tugged out, came out lovely and fresh, and we beat naked. Or, we won it by a big score. And as I said, clubhouses and fields and everything don't count here. This was inside the rib cages we count. And those kind of things developed me. And then I started to, I was playing reasonably well, and I got picked on the Limerick under 21 team in 1965. Now that was a huge thing at the time, because it was very hard to break into that actually county scene. We had no context anywhere. And I don't know actually how they picked me, to be honest about it. I just must have come to someone's attention anyway. And at that particular time, then I took over the captaincy of the Ballybrown junior team, and the actual captaincy of the team, and trainer of the team, and mentor of the team, and everything except columnist. And we went on then, and from that situation, we won county junior championship, which was magnificent, very difficult to go Limerick because there were so many good teams there. And we struggled hard for about 3 or 4 years to win it. We were beaten in the quarter-final, we were beaten in the semi-final, we were beaten in the final by Rivalry in 66. And, we were beaten in team matches we should have won. But we came back in 67 and we won the county junior championship, and I was captain and I trained the team. And that, in actual fact, was the highlight of and at the same time, with the success that we were having on the field, which I played more than my part in, and not being beheaded or anything about that, but it took a lot of work with a few very close top class officials, people like Frank Hanley, for instance, like I got his eternal reward long before time, and McCarthy's like man called Paddy McGilligan, and people like that were really genuine GAA hurling people, and that was the actual start of the success that Ballybrown have since. Marvellous success. And so at that then I was selected in. I got selected for the Limerick senior team after that period, and I played for Limerick for 10 years after that, as in intercounty for league and championships after that.
There was a big achievement to be selected from Ballybrown, because I kind of got the impression Limerick historically kind of had a select group of clubs, which you would later change as manager, which we'll come to that later on. But at that time, it would have predominantly 3 or 4 major clubs, wouldn't it?
They had. Yeah. They rolled the roast, we say, like the strong clubs in Limerick rolled the roast. And even if you were selected, like you found it very. And that was I blame that myself, from going back and not being critical of people that are long dead and gone now, but they were all, I suppose, maybe doing their best, but the structure there, wasn't fair, number one. And the actual, as I mentioned already to you, probably the coaching set up there was, I had selectors now who had won All Ireland with Limerick, back in the 40s. Tremendous hurling people, they were legends, and their names were legends, and they were selectors. But I, including the great Mick Mackey, Jackie Power, the Quaids, they were great men and they were great hurlers. But as regards the coaching aspect of it, whereas they were involved with the teams, the coaching aspects of it was, we never received any benefit from there, because it's, you can be a great hurler and you can be a good selector, but you mightn't be a good coach, you see, and that's what I actually always use as my bottom line: coaching, hand to hand, face to face, body to body coaching, explaining things, how you want teams to play, and and I don't know where I developed that, but that was something that I had, and something that I must have been doing something right, because with the club we even when I started playing, and I never wanted to be a manager. I never wanted to be a coach. I never wanted to be a selector to balance the ball. I was what you call nearly coerced into all those positions because I was very busy and I had a very busy, commercial life, as well. And I was not making two myself, I made more five myself, and but I could never say no to the club. I could never say no to my friends, and I was often left in holding the baby, and as it happened in later years, maybe holding more than the baby, I mean, taking the blame as well. But that's all part of it, and I didn't lose any weight over it. I say that.
Your dad was one of the founding members of Patrickswell Club in 1945. I'd say in later years you ended up coursing for that, did you?
Well, we had a very, very good relationship with my father myself. He never praised me. But I know that he liked what we did, and he put a huge amount of backwards. He was a very, very hard-working man that called a spade, as you said earlier on.
Yeah, didn't fall far from the tree there.
He was, he hadn't an awful lot. He actually lost his life tragically like that in a drowning accident. A lot of he was very, very, he was an unusual man because he was he reminded me of he was a very religious person, very hard worker. He never drank and he never smoked. He was a pioneer, and he was a very active Christian person, and he would give you what he'd have. I mean, I often say, I never asked him for much, no. But if you asked him if we said, I want 500 pounds at a time, he would give it to you. He wouldn't say to you, when I get it back, of what you want it for. He was that type of individual. And to me, he reminded me of the Beatitudes, which always meant to give and not to count the cost. That to me has been kind of a yardstick of my own life, and my own time, and my person, and what I can contribute to society and to things in general. Let it be political, let it be social or sporting.
Very good. So the pinnacle of the improvement of Ballybrown hurling came in '89 when you won your first county title.
'89, that's correct, yeah. Again, again, '89 came, and that was, we actually were, you hear a lot now about development squads and that. It's a hurling area. The failure had started, and a lad called Jack Sheehan and Father Pat Kelly, had took this team to the actual they won the failure, and that was the team now. It contained the little Jim Ali O'Connor, and and his people, his age group at that particular time. They won the failure, and which was under 14. And again, that team started to develop. They were going well in the minor. They actually won at 21, and then you see, my own history would be I never had an awful lot of much to do with underage teams. So I always dealt with senior hurling as the cliche goes. And I'm not saying that in any derogatory way or anything, because the case of that they were landed at my door. I didn't go looking for them. But I always give great credit to the people that were there coaching, and I still do, coaching the anonymous people, the people that have forgotten about it, not ever hardly mentioned, and they don't want to be mentioned. But it is important that people think about the coaches that take out the underage now, number 10s, 14s, and 16s, and build them up into a team as they haven't done in Ballybrown again now. They have come. There's another group of top class players playing. And again, there's one of them coming through now to the Ireland Limerick team, Colin Coughlin, as I said, of course, on my own. And there are O'Connors, and they're actually now, as Ballybrown is expanding now as a parish near Limerick, there are people now playing the game that wouldn't have been playing any hurling, playing on the teams, and they're developing again. So I was able to build on the hard work that was done by Father Kelly and Jack Sheehan, and to mention those, because those are the people that counted into the day. And when it was handed to me, Then we had a battle, of course, like everything else. The senior championship in Limerick is a huge championship. It's a big, that time it was knockout as well. There was no backdoor, there was no draw the following morning. And we had to we had near success in 83, 87, 86, 87. I was grieved with 87 last period in Kilmallock. The gate grounds closed for renovations. Should have won that match, got a couple of raw deals during the match, and ended up cribbing and trying about anything. I obviously beaten and taken, but that was a match we should have won. That was a final that was done out of. And we came back again, and we came back again in 89. And that was a wonderful year. Now, I was coach and manager of that team. I had selected with me John Loftus, Sean Binnis, and they were absolutely dedicated to the test, and you always tend to, for Michael Lynch was there. He was the local headmaster in the school, and again, it's when you go into that. I was in a new realm then, because I had plenty experience of junior hurling and underage hurling up to around the 21 area, 21 age group and that. And now to take on a senior team, take on a senior championship, and to take on the Mighty Limerick, which although the county team hadn't been burning up the track, we say, at the same time, it was very hard to win the Limerick championship. So we succeeded, and we beat Doon, in the actual final in 89, and that was a wonderful achievement. From there, because the team we had the team, we had no stars, but we had very, very solid 18 players. And luckily enough, at that particular time, or always in Ballybrown, you nearly had them always. There were hardly anyone walking away. There was very little at third level, and you had them training nearly every night. So we blended into a teamwork of very coached meticulously, and I suppose a lot of them now, even to this day, would say, we don't want to see him anymore. That's me, because they'd be fed up with me. I'd be very, very disciplined and very strict at training. And when it came down to all aspects of the team, there'd be no favoritism, there'd be no politics, there'd be no favoritism for anyone. I called it as I saw it, and I have yet to end up in court about anything like the radio. But at the same time, you can become very unpopular, and you can, you drop one. I actually, one incident that happened, and I think this was really, and it's funny really, in the 89 Munster final against Six Bridge. Now, the actual, after winning the championship, then we were walking across the field, and John Loftus said to me, he said, we're withdrawing our players, he said, no, from the Limerick panel. No, we hadn't that many players in the panel, we'd only one. That was Ali O'Connor. Because it had become a tradition with our neighbours, that when they won, and they had won a lot of championships, straight away then they had their own players back for the club championship and the whole lot, and that was all that mattered. But I remember we were after winning the championship. I'd be very, very, very drained after matches, maybe mentally drained out, because I wouldn't be showing an awful lot of emotions, which I got heavily criticized for. I wouldn't be ever put up in the stand like we had last Sunday above in Corrigan Park or anything like that. I always respected the actual position of a coach and manager and my team on the field, that they were doing what they were coached to do. And I didn't have to do any running or shouting, or any running up and down, because that would be already done. Not running in a running shouting capacity on the training ground. And that's what. So, a lot of my style wasn't popular, you see, because at that time, the more people that ran in around the midfield, which they're still doing, and which they were doing all the time, it's more of a showmanship, in my book, anyway. And it really confuses people more than anything else, because if you haven't your coaching, and if you haven't your work done before they cross that white line, well, then you're only a phony. And if you think that you can resurrect things by running in and running out, running shouting and running up and down the field, well, that to me was always a no. But we were, as we left the field, I repeat myself, my man John after this, my secretary said to me, we're withdrawing our team. I said, we're withdrawing nobody from any panel. I said, what I want is people on the panel, more of them on the panel. I said, because it had a to wear a country jersey to me, I'd wore it often enough. He's a status and he's you're a role model. And I had a good few players that I reckoned were good enough, like to wear that county jersey. Now mine won. You see, maybe not as spectacular as Ollie, which was a rare gem, but with coaching, encouragement, and additional training would be good enough. And that's the yardstick I used later on in my own time as county manager. But after we went on then and we played Rollmore and Watford, we beat them at home. We had a terrific match in Bruff against the county champions in Tipperary, Clonalty, which is where we came from. My father was born and bred in Clonalty. And
that must have been a very special day for your family, like, was it?
Well, it was a very special day for us because we beat him by a point, and my cousin missed the level of it, but he was an expert. He was like Joe Henning for free taking, but he got him under the pressure in Bruff that day. It was unbelievable pressure. The place was packed. There could be maybe 7 or 8 or 10,000 people in Bruff who were hanging off the rafters there. And so it was a wonderful match. They had 3 All-Ireland winning hurlers on that Clonalty team. And for the previous year, I think they were Tipper champions for the previous year, and they were playing for Clonalty. Joe Hazel won the game. They had a tremendous team, and we actually beat them by 1 point. We went on into the Munster final, and that was a brilliant match in the game. One of the best club matches that I have seen in my time, and one of the best club matches that was ever played in the Gaelic grounds at club level. And we ran into a bit of bother before the match because there was a bit of a confrontation before the ball was thrown in between our full forward Peter McQueen and the 6 mile bridge, fullback who he nudged him or hit him anyway, and McQueen responded, and the fullback went down, and we had the player sent off before the match started at all. So we were down to 14 men. We played 6 mile bridge with 14 men who had been Munster champions and All-Ireland champions previously, and were Clare champions, and were riddled with county players in a magnificent match. But
including your young Davy Fitzgerald was in goals that day.
Yes, I didn't actually make up now. I mean, who was where, but I know they had a fair sprinkling of Clare inter-county players, and Clare, to me, is nearly the home of hurling as well. There's a tremendous tradition there. I would hate to see what's happening there now, but look, they get over it. But anyway, that night I had to make some early changes anyway. And you see, to the lonely place in the sideline, you have to stand by your conviction, because you have a job to do. And I made a change after 15 minutes. I brought off one corner forward, and I bring another corner forward who had been dropped for the final, and who had been very upset about being dropped. And I would be delighted to see if I was upset about being dropped. I'd be a lot more if they didn't care. So anyway, that night we won the match by a couple of points in a tremendous match, and now we were Munster champions. I mean, an unbelievable position for Ballybrown, and I'm not being making it a sob story or anything. I mean, we were a corner of a parish, and we were underdogs for years, trying to make a breakthrough. And it's a hard job, and I believe that it's the right job. Make it hard, make it tough. Don't give any favours. Don't give any false passes to it. Only let them work it out and let them do it themselves. But don't take out of them, encourage them. So anyway, we were back in the clubhouse that night, and a friend of mine who had been a very close friend of mine now said to me that night, he said, Tommy, he said, you're great to win. He said, no. And he said, we're great to win. He said, but you were a bit hard on Ed, he said. And Ed was his nephew, and Ed lived. And he has died of cancer since, as a young man. A tremendous athlete and a lovely hubby. And the letter brain was Chrissy Hayes. Chrissy Hayes was was his first cousin. So Jim Cusick was their uncle, both. A good friend of mine and a great character. And he said to me, see, Tom, he said, you were a bit hard than it. Well, no, after 15 minutes, or maybe a little more, I was. But look, I said, the call had to be made, Jim. I said, and the point about it is, I said, the cup is there above the counter, there above this in the clubhouse now, and we had come a long way off the field as well, as long as being on the field, like we had come now with clubhouses and all that kind of stuff that goes with it, and dressing rooms and community centre nearly built by the club and built by Ballybrown and built by the people that hurled outside in the field and got the support of the parish, like of the half a parish anyway. So anyway, that's fine. I was busy and I had to find I was at work and they were all celebrating still and I had to join them that night or something and I had to come back out. I'm not a social person. I told you before, I never drank alcohol in my life. I never smoked. No, that's not to say that I'm a goody or anything, but that's where I come from. That's the background I come from. Like, and so he said to me, Tommy said, I'm sorry for what I said to you last night. He said, I was wrong. He said, because I saw the video. We saw the video. We watched it 3 or 4 times. And so I said, Jim said, don't worry. Jim was a great old friend of mine and he was a gentleman. I said, Jim said, it's okay. I said, don't worry about that. I said, the only thing, Jim, I said is, I had no video. So like that sums up the position of when you have to make a decision on the field.
Split
second decision. You can work for you and it should go against you. And it's a thankless job at the end of the day. You get blamed and you can fall out with people, you can fall out with their mothers, their sisters, or even their fathers and mothers. So like tis a very, very precarious position to be in. But you have to be able to be fair. And my whole makeup was, let it be, I've been accused of many things, but I can never be accused of being unfair to anyone, because like everyone that I encouraged and I put a lot of work into, and if they didn't make the grade, well then they were treated, or all were treated fair. That's my mantra, and I hope that it will never change, and it won't ever change.
So after Davy and 6 Mile Bridge were beaten, you had to go up to the Glens of Antrim to play Lockheed Shamrocks. There was a battle royale above.
And the battle royale there was funny parts of that now as well, because we're talking about 89, we're talking about 91, 90 now, because they had moved into the into February. And by then, like, the team had been gaining momentum in Limerick, and support came from all over. In actual fact, it was the first time that I had met a young lad from Carrick called Michael Harnett, who became my lifelong friend afterwards. Like, and I was a kind of a mentor for him, and he was my statsman, like, as regards what was going on. Now, a fanatical hurling and analyst and statistician, and it was the first time that he had come on board as well, and as a supporter from Carrick. So people had come from all over. So they organised a train. Now, I actually, in my time as Ballybrown and Limerick, never ever got involved in any kind of logistics whatsoever, with jerseys, with anything, any of that. I never ever. But there was always someone that you could rely on. In that regard, John Loftus. John Loftus was the man that was the chief organizer, and he was a selector as well, and he organized everything. So they took a train but we went by coach. You see, the supporters went by train, but we went by coach on Saturday. And it was very funny, because going into that, now, I mean, we hadn't been, and even as of now, I never been to many places. I mean, Cork, like, I mean, it's very near me. I haven't been there too often, and that's why I had to get Matt Tierney for the drive me down here today. I mean, because I wouldn't find my way around Cork if I was here for 12 months. And I'm a hopeless man for locations and things, and anyway, I always prefer to be at home.
I'm proof of that, because I came here 15 years ago and I'm still here, like.
So anyway, we went up, and we had, of course, with that time the British Army were there, and they were searching. We were stopped and we were taken onto the bus, and you see that's what the political aspect and my political life, which is I've been a political animal all my life, like, and when you see the Brits and the parents coming on board the buses, checking our passports and checking our details. I mean, it was a bit much to take. But before we went into the actual lens of Antrim, we had to stop. Now, I wouldn't be. I'm not a pessimist or anything, and I kind of a bit naive as well. We had a few people on actually they were with CIE, and they to the CIE bus, which we had to pay for now. Don't anyone think that we had it for nothing or anything? We had to pay a lot of money for it, and so they sent one or two of their own officials as well to make sure that the bus would come home safe. Like number one, knowing the reputation that Ballybrown had been now. Getting. So anyway, we put into they stopped in this pub, and it was just as you go into the Glen. And so I don't know what his name was, but he was a real typical now, like he was all business. The bus came off, and he knew your man from CIE, which I won't mention his name. He knew him, and they had crossed swords before, and they had met before, and there had been some bit of correspondence and some bit of detail. So he said, "Oh, he welcomed us. I shook our hands, and we got off the bus." And he wanted to know, did we bring Ali O'Connor with us? No, he was the star of the team. Like he was then we counted him, and I said to him, we hardly came without him anyway, you see. And so he was counting, you could see him counting them. The northern publican was well able to, he said, we have 50 here anyway, because we had probably 45 on the bus anyway, with subs and a few officials and the selectors, and then maybe 45, 46. So it was a nice group of a Saturday evening at about 3 o'clock. You see, to get it. So we went into the pub anyway, and there were fires lighting, and there were girls behind the bar, and there were darts going on, and so this was always very comfortable. Like of a cold winter, the frost now was in the ground, and the snow was in the ground. It was actually melting now, which would be worse, and the coldness of it, and the glens. No, I was never up to glens in good weather or bad weather, but this now was as bad as you could get, and the surroundings, the warmth, and the fire, and there was a few
like here, right?
Yes, better altogether, because we had
a real farm, right?
We had real hospitality here. With beer put up on the counter, and I had men with me that could drink beer. And as I said, that'd be a story for another day if I wanted to talk about the demise of the team. But that's a different matter. But they were still in their element. There were ladies behind the bar, had the holler on them now for a cold night, for a cold day. They were fairly well attired and all. And we had it. So Mahidi was watching. Dave Mahidi, of all the people like you ever met, you never met a sound man, Dave Mahidi. Unbelievable trainer, a thinker, and not a huge sense of humor, but very genuine. And Mahidi had been a trainer with me for a good few years now. And I had great faith in him, and that's would contribute to our success later on as well, would be the amount of the element and the input that he had. Tremendous character, and very single-minded. Came from a soccer background, covered himself in glorious soccer and with rugby teams and with Ballybrown and with Limerick as well. And always there was always a question mark about in the GA hierarchy, having the soccer background and the soccer thing. Of course, we were thinking about that in at this particular time, you see. But I didn't mind that. I wasn't in the popularity section at all. I didn't mind who had a problem with anyone once I decided who was going to do what. So anyway, he looked at me and he said, "These surroundings now," he said, "will be too comfortable for us." And it is amazing. I was thinking the same. We're sitting back, non-drinkers as well. Bad people have your company, non-drinkers. And like at any stage, and I'm speaking against myself, hence the reason I wouldn't be invited to too many functions like that, because they make out that you're going to be sizing things up, which naturally you wouldn't be inebriated or like that. But he said to me, he listened, Right, he said. So we got to the debut college. So we blew the whistle anyway, and after the first drink, and we were gone out the door. So I think his name was McCaughey, so whatever about the welcome that we had coming in, there was very little welcome for us going out the door. We really had to drag him out of chains and ropes. It was funny and it was hilarious, like, when out they were coming, the bus was revved up. If they weren't on it, they would be left there. And that's because we were going to Ballycastle. That's where we were overnight. And Ballycastle was up at the top of Antrim, up the next column, the Giants Causeway, and we were staying there in a hotel. And when we arrived in Ballycastle, now, I mean, it wasn't a very happy journey because I was called everything in the Rising Zone, jocosely, but seriously, at the same time, fellas had been taken out of their comfort zone. They had great visions of what they were going to do for the night and for the evening and the whole lot. Now they were back to reality. They were back in the bus.
The night before All Ireland Club semi-final, though, they were anxious to go on the beer, like.
But the enticement was there. You see, you have to look at the circumstance. Like, these lads were very young boys. Like, they were mad for action. Didn't care. I mean, like, you see, the taste of drink, the taste of alcohol is something I don't know. I never tasted it, but there must be something in it. Some kind of a draw plaster anyway. But out anyway, we had a battle with. So we got them out anyway, and we rounded them up and up in the bus and away from Ballycastle. When we arrived in Ballycastle, our meal was set for 7 o'clock in the hotel. And sure, they weren't expecting us until 12. So there was a conspiracy theory straight away. Yeah. Why wouldn't they expect us until 12 when we were booked at 7? Like, so they weren't ready. The hotel when we arrived, they were kind of in a state of shock. Where are you going? Like, where are we going? We're coming for dinner. And we want it now, know. So I never saw steaks and things got together so fast. So the whole thing was the conspiracy theory anyway was that they had. I think they had done it before. It had worked before for some team. I think they were from North Tipperary. We won't mention them, but it had worked before, and they had succeeded in. But the boys in Ballybrown anyway, as great as they were, and we were able to oversee and overstep that bit of an obstacle that was put in our way straight away. And it was due to Mahedy's, and myself, I say I wouldn't behind the door either when the decision was made. I just showed no mercy because all he had was one drink and they were gone. And Mr. McCaughey, I think was his name, the Pope, he wasn't looking for a lay when we were out the door. Mm-hmm. He was inside, like, I mean, I say he had a lot of money laid out for a big spend that never happened. And we arrived in Ballycastle. So the following day then, we had to, we overnighted in Ballycastle. We got our food eventually, and we had a night, and that was a night, an easy night. No, we had to, we had to be, you had to send over them the same as Mother Hubbard. I mean, because these lads hadn't been to too many places either, so, I mean, different fellas would react in different ways, and you expect responsibility, you expect people, but sure, you couldn't be expecting that, and they went to do it, and they wouldn't want to do it, but they had to anyway. So we imposed a curfew anyway, and we played Lockheed the following day, and it was unbelievable because actually when the train arrived from Limerick, up to Lockheed, and they had a very strong team. That fellas, I'd say they weren't for Lockheed at all. But, they had a very, very strong team, and we won by a point or two. I think it was only a point. And after the match, and with the referee, there was absolute bedlam. They beat themselves and referees and all that, and we were lucky to get out of Belfast or out of the North. But we did, and we went on to Crow Park to play in the final in St. Patrick's Day, which we lost.
Yeah, I suppose Antrim Hurling at the time, like they were in the All Ireland final in '89. Yeah. So it was a good time for Antrim Hurling. So it was an achievement to beat an Antrim club in their own backyard, and they went on to win an All Ireland club in recent years, Lockheed Shamrocks in 2012, was it? So it was
a great Antrim. There's a great tradition in Antrim because hurling in Antrim is a statement. And in all fairness to them, I remember going up there in the early 70s when no one would play. And Antrim, they're in the league, and Antrim chairman came into the dressing room above. I said it was about 72, maybe a 71 or 2. And he said, that he never forget it for Limerick. He said they were abandoned, he said, and they were at the time the trouble. I remember at that particular time, I saw the parrots and their houses and their haunches at the bottom of the Divis Street, there at the Divis Street flats in the Falls Road, the bottom of the Falls Road, and they with their faces black. It was a frightening experience. But we went up, Limerick went up. We didn't dog go now. Some of us stayed at home, their wives were kind of minding them, we say you have them. And but we went up to Antrim, and he said, we'll never forget it. It is great to see they stand in Antrim. And it's great to see that they have now, even to this day, made another statement and are you see, and that's what I always would be my own spirit, like, would be to say, like, let them do it and let it be had, but encourage them and support them. Don't knock them. Like, don't know, Kuzik said that they wouldn't win a match, he said, in the television after they winning the McDonagh Cup when they beat Kerry in a great match the day they allowed. A lot better match than the one we saw afterwards. Like, let that be said. That was my opinion. And to have Antrim, I mean, absolutely insulted. I mean, by don't know, like, I mean, in the television, and not alone did he do that, but he wasn't even checked about it. Like, when he said they get severe beatings next year. Well, they beaten Clare, the drama was up. So, like, in other words, like, I mean, and when he was asked about it by Joanne, which, fair play to her, she did remind me, but she only reminded me because she had an email got from a man that I know well, and it wasn't me, that for to ask him about his comments after winning the McDonagh Cup, and she asked him, he said it was he had 5 different ways of doing things and saying things, so that was one of them. And that's what's in television now, giving us their expert view.
Yeah, it is nice to see them progressing, Antrim, and hopefully they'll retain their status in Division 1 now Sunday.
Yeah, be very good now, and whereas Laois are in the same boat, Laois are also trying their case, you know, and those counties, like, need support. They don't need sympathy, but they need support. And so what I mean by support is they need an input of an infrastructure, like coaches and money that the GA have more than enough of, that they can spend, to be rather than spend it on stadiums and maybe someone could turn out be white elephants, to be spent on our games. And there's plenty of opportunities in counties like Westmeath, Laois, Antrim, Meath, Kildare, and places like that have a hurling, and I know because I spent some time in those counties, and I know that the genuine people are there, but they need to be. And they're football counties, and I spent a term in Westmeath, and unfortunately at the time, unfortunately, like that when I was in Westmeath, they were to win the Leinster Club Championship, and Paddy was with Paddy O'Shea was there as manager, and it was an uphill battle, but we didn't do too bad.
Good. So you mentioned the club final in 1990. You came up short against Ballyhale Shamrocks. But 2 years later, like buses, like a bus air and bus, you wait all day for one, and two comes along together. You retained, or you won another Limerick county title.
Yeah, we came back in '91 then in the county Limerick Championship, and as well we were much the same team. I was always trying to develop a team and bring on one or two onto it. And you know, when in a club situation, you have an awful selection. You're working what you have, and I was lucky that team were dedicated and they, you know, were prepared for the disciplines that you needed, like, for to be successful. Like, you don't need discipline. You need, and I don't mean like giving friends a bad time or anything. I mean, like, just ensuring that the system that you have and the way is worked by everybody, not by a select group or by one or two, but by everybody. And that's what I always try to do. 91 was a great year as well, but we came up short against Patrickswell, another match that we should have won. We didn't get the rub of the green. We didn't get fair play that day on the field, and I say that with no regret or with no apologies to anybody whatsoever. And that was 90, no, sorry, not 91, 90. And we came back then on the following year, and we actually won the 91 championship. So it shows that the form was there. There was nothing, there was nothing hissing miss about it. It wasn't a one-hit wonder. It was a team that were really doing well, coach well, manage well, and a club that was in support of them, and a club that gained an awful lot from that particular time, because I always would have my eye on a different thing. When I produce a team, I'd be looking at the behaviour of the team, I'd be looking at the actual disciplines of the team, and as role models that they'd be creating an interest for younger people coming up and their parents. That I never concentrated a whole lot about what young people taught, but I always said this is what our parents taught, is what I was concentrating on always. I mean, they were the influencers, and that's what any team that I did produce like that would be, and that was a model that I continued with Limerick.
Very good. I saw a couple of clips from the game against Clarecastle in the Munster Club Championship, and it was like something with the football factory or kind of the casuals. Things got a bit heated late in the game.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge disappointment. And again, that was 91, and it was the first round of the Munster Championship. The team that time was definitely, although we had won the county in Limerick, it was in decline. And we went to us to play Clarecastle. Again, I would have good faith in the team, you know. But things happened that day that we got blamed for, and I'm not one to blame for not accept blame or anything like that. But what happened that day was Clarecastle and their mentors, they actually went into the field before the match. There was no one allowed into this that day. There was no supporters. There was no mentors. Only just a couple. It was very, very strictly adhered to. That was. But Clarecastle succeeded in having about 10 or 15 people around the field, different strategic positions. But Hurling, never mind, in the field that day. And the incident, and the actual fight that started that day was a disgrace. It should never have happened, but the team, as I said, we wouldn't we actually, whatever chance we had of Hurling, we would never want to make any hand of fight, and that was my mantra all the time. And that happened all of a sudden. There are other instances happened that you can't control, and it happened later on with Limerick against that in the 96 All-Ireland final. Instance happened there. And you know that can happen on the field that you can't do anything about. You know, as I said, all I could ever do was say, look, that's the end of that team. We're gone. They were in decline, and we didn't even go out gracefully that day. But we weren't totally to blame. We were set up that day in this, and even when the dressing room, when Clarecastle came into the Ballybrown dressing room afterwards, the match to say, well, to say that. They all had Hurling in their hand. I never saw it happen before, and I never saw it, and I hope it never happens again. But that you were going to a dressing room to say, look, I mean, after the match, we always went to the team that beat us, and I have been in as many dressing rooms with teams that beat us that I have their teams that we beat, and I would always be very respectful. But they arrived into the dressing room that day with hurleys in their hand, armed as if there was going to be someone going inside to attack them. So that idea alone, I mean, would give you a clue to the attitude and what happened. And it wasn't totally Ballybrown's fault. We came out the wrong end of it. We went to Munster Council and we had to stand our trial. We didn't do what other people from there did, was to go attacking the Munster Council or anything. But we went in and we made our case, and we had players suspended. We accepted whatever penalties that were given out, and we moved on.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the legacy of your time in Ballybrown was 2 county championships, the first ever in club's history, and a Munster Club Championship, and getting to Croke Park on All-Ireland final day for a club that had just won their first junior 24 years earlier, was it?
Yeah.
So phenomenal growth and progress there.
It was phenomenal growth and progress. A lot of people contributed to that party. But like I wouldn't say that I was there for it. I was there as a player. I was when we won our first junior championship, and after a long time trying, I captained the team and I coached and trained the team. I mean, I was only 24, 20. I wasn't 24. I was only maybe 22 or 3, and I saw like that I was involved all the time, and it was great to be involved, and it's great. But it actually comes from nothing. And at the end of the day, it's it's something that you do for your team, your club. And the one aspect of it that I would always feel, and I see maybe we have enough of it, people that do that are not respected enough, are not, I mean, you can be very easily forgotten about it. And I'm not saying that I should be any different now, I mean, but it's a regret that I have the people that put in the effort. And as I said, any old holders now that would be sick or anything, or that wouldn't be well, or that maybe would unfortunately pass away, I'd always be respectful about what public him, and I had a house go to a funeral and say, look, that's how we can do, that they wore the jersey, they walked the walk, they did their part. And I think myself that there are some clubs, and in particular my own club in Ballybrown, wouldn't have that, which is surprising, wouldn't have that what you call culture. I mean, it's very important to me that people that and it goes to show like that's where the lifeblood of the GA was built on. And the people that people that weren't prominent, people that just did a small part, or maybe just do the field or do the hurleys or coach underage teams, there's not enough respect paid to those people. And that is one regret that I have, in particular with my own club in Ballybrown. It's not a factor, and it should be.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just going to touch maybe just on your playing career with Limerick, Tom, there. So you have the distinction of winning an All-Ireland medal on the field of play in '73.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine that's one of the happiest days of your life.
Well, it is really. I mean, it's a good. You mentioned something there now that I really, that I'm anti. And I saw it there in recent, and I wrote about it actually there. And it says on the field of play. And that is, I'm totally against that theology and that culture, because anybody that's picked in a county team, that can be number one. And it was something that I actually really worked a lot on myself in my own time as a manager. Anybody that wears from number 1 to number 31, like, if they all play their part at different times. There's a lot wrote about the likes of Shefflin, and all the players that won so many other medals. They didn't win them in their own. There was, and to add to a situation that they were on the field they played in, to me, is an injury to insult, because it actually, it's derogatory to people that play their part, go in as a sub, maybe scored a goal in this first or second round, that would play a part in the overall winning of the All-Ireland. Because when I played hurling for Limerick as a player, and when I coached Limerick and managed them later on, there was no such thing as a backdoor. Every match was a final, and there was no draw for them on to say who would play the qualifiers, which now it has, to me, has totally and completely, sanitized the game of as for championship. Championship to me is like Wimbledon, it's like the FA Cup. It's knockout gone. That is the only way that hurling can survive and be back. And it's the one aspect of it, not wandering and meandering at the moment, Paddy. Looking at the decision this year to have football knockout, but hurling 2 chances again. I can't understand. I found it always very hard to understand for theory, but you see, it is driven with money and finance. And I believe myself that the fact that, anybody that wears the jersey, you see, and that plays a part, like let him be for a half an hour, or come in when a player is injured, when a player's absent, or when maybe when some players kind of decide that they're in dispute, which happened again in early 73 in Limerick, when some players decided that, well, they were going to they didn't like the coach, or didn't like the manager, or didn't like the trainer, the temperance trainers really, and that they objected, and they went up in the stand and said Limerick, very prominent people, and Limerick had to call in their reserves to play Tipperary in the league, and went out and do those lads. So, like, I mean, I maybe now being popular in saying that, but I believe a team is a team, and let you be number 1 or 31 or 21. I mean, you're definitely like, I mean, there should be no such thing as on the field of play, because on the field of play, you're supported by your teammates and by your substitutes. And I'm not being contradictory or anything. No, I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's something that I've written about and that I hold very dearly, and that everybody should would play a part, and that is that goes very deep to me, like that. And I saw, I mean, in Limerick, in my playing days, I saw all sorts of things that happened. I saw, we say, one of our, a lovely man, he was manager of the team, Dr. Dick Stokes, I mean, in my time, and I saw very prominent players who were elevated to stars and to superstars wouldn't talk to him. And instances that he came to me and said, Tom, what am I going to do? No, I was only hanging on as a team. I mean, what kept me on the team was my versatility to play in portrait. And I never got the chance to play only in America, where I really wanted to play centre back. I was always either wing or centre field, and I was never a centre fielder or forward. But I liked it. My best position was as centre back. I never had a chance to play for that. Only when we went to America to play the All-Stars, the 3 matches I played there. And so, like, I mean, it was a very, very, a tough time for Hurling, because Hurling was dominated time by Tip and by Kilkenny, Cork in particular, clearing ourselves, I suppose, on the one level. And again, as I said, the lack of coaching, the lack of no, we had support. There wasn't, I'm not saying in any way that we were short of anything, but what we were as regards logistics, as regards backup, food, anything like that, we were never, ever, there was never a question when I was a player. We had very, very decent county board, but we were lacking someone to say, look, we need coach, we need coaches that can fine tune and hone these players, you know. And I think we would have done, if we had that, I would certainly have been a better player, and like definitely, like, and if I was could be a better player, then our whole panel at a particular time would have been like I saw. We soldiered, and we soldiered hard, and we, as I said, we had good old wins, and you know, we had sad defeats, but look, it came good in 73, and 73 to me was, we were lucky, because we had only been beaten in Munster final titles, and we were also lucky again London in this, you know, in the semi-final. So, like, I mean, you can look at things like, we can go back to 2018 Limerick, which is the present Limerick team. There's something more to look there when taking Cork.
Yeah.
You know, so like, I mean, you need that, you need the break, and we often didn't get it, you know, but we were up against huge teams. Tipperary were a brilliant team. Cork were the same. Cork great hurlers, and we had Spirit, Fire and Brimstone hurling, the same with Tipperary. Clare were always there or thereabouts. They were always had to be Waterford. Sure, could be 18 on the day. They could be, they have produced and are still producing the best hurlers in the country. And like, I mean, Kilkenny was Kilkenny there. So, like, I mean, for the difficult time, we needed that bit of an edge to push us over the top, and for them improve. As well as we had trainers and we were coached, but a trainer and a coach is a different thing. It was mostly, we were concentrated on physical training, and that time the physical training was very basic, and it didn't follow on to the coaching and to tell us, you know, as to how we would improve our game. They weren't there, and whose fault was, I don't know. We just probably didn't look at it at that particular time as being a vital ingredient in Limerick, which it was. Tipperary had it. They had it in Kilkenny. They had them in Cork. I mean, Clare were like ourselves. They were kind of, you know, swimming midstream as well.
I suppose having the All-Ireland medal though was a great honour to have, like to have the biggest prize in the game and to finally get over the line, because it was 33 years since Limerick last won in Ireland. Before then, like there was a lot of years where even 73 was 18 years. There was 18 years of a gap between the last Munster Championship as well. So
yes,
it was an
well,
important year.
Of course, don't get me wrong, like at all. I'm not like, I mean, you're right like that. I mean, an All-Ireland medal is like an Olympic gold. That's it. You know, you achieve the ultimate when you win an All-Ireland medal. But as I said, the aspect of it is that it takes more than one man to win a medal. It takes a team, it takes a whole
panel,
team,
like, yeah.
and you see, and this is the point I'm making. I mean, an All-Ireland medal is a great achievement, and really and truly, what it does is it kind of you know, it negates an awful lot of talk, and you know what you see. You can't argue against an All-Ireland medal. I mean, and I'm not arguing against anything, but I'm just saying that it's the ultimate, and it can often cover up major teams that can be unlucky, you know, as well. And maybe I'm a bit negative now in that regard, but to have an All-Ireland medal, and I have an All-Ireland medal, I have 2 Munster Championships, and I have a National League medal, and I have a medal, a top medal out of each competition, and that's as much as you can ever have. Like, and numbers of them to me don't matter. I mean, to have that and to achieve it and to compete and to be a sportsman and to be a contributor, to me is what really counts.
Even Waterford, I suppose, would be a good example there. Like, you know, nearly over 60 years without an Ireland. They're kind of, there were so many great players and involved in so many great matches, but they just couldn't get over the line in the final. Like,
Waterford are an ideal example of it, and Waterford, like, I mean, have contributed not themselves as well to being in that position. I can assure you that, and like, and maybe, hopefully now, as I said, you know, they're a bit naive as well. You know, I mean, I was involved in some radio programs. I do a bit of in the sports department down there, and maybe in their local radio there, they've been on a few times, and we and listening to them, and with my own background and my own, you know, I mean, they're naive, like, I mean, to be honest about it. And even before last year's All-Ireland, now we had after the Munster final against Limerick, we had a good debate, you know, and on the radio, because really went viral actually, and then they wanted actually they invited me back to a pre-All-Ireland program, which they never honoured, which they never came back to have. So in other words, they didn't want to hear right to say no, and they were down the same road. I'm saying that they should do what I say, but in actual fact, it gave you an insight into the bit of naivety that they didn't want to hear only their own version of things, which was a disaster. Like, it turned out to be an All-Ireland final, that if you were a Waterford hurler, you'd walk away after Overcrow Park without contesting an All-Ireland, you know, like without surrendering at Overcrow Park, you know, and really and truly. So there's something, and I like it. I like Waterford hurling. We in our run in the 90s, I think we beat them 3 times, and it was only by the hand of God we beat them, you know, I mean, by pint or 2 pints. So there's no, I mean, there is no way like that they are at the stage that they should be without winning in All-Ireland. I mean, but against that, you see, the other aspect of it is that, you see, it has come now maybe more of a load than 80 years that you have to win the All-Ireland, you see. I remember there's a couple of things would be, you know, which I remember with regret. Like, one was after being beaten by Wexford in 96. Now, I mean, we were in the Jury's Hotel above in Dublin, and we were at our meal, and he had this to say, there was terrible disappointment to get our second time being beaten. To me, no one died, because it is a sport. Didn't matter of you do your best, you on the day things will go wrong, and things, you know, I mean, only one team can win anyway, you know. And Jack Boatman, who was president of the GA, like he said, he made a big thing anyway, that he made a big speech that, it was that he came to the defeated All Ireland finalists. There's much to say like that we kind of, for something what kind of, you couldn't cash in too many banks now, I'll do that, but at the same time, he made a big play of it anyway. And what he did say was, then he went on to say that Limerick, he said, today had no passion. No. To me, like, you see, that again, Wexford had won the All Ireland, no doubt about that. They had worse circumstances in the match, to me, needed to be looked at. They weren't looked at. The disallowed goal was no disallowed goal. It was an absolute disgrace that goal was disallowed. There was never a question mark at the border. I think they won by, was two, how many points they won by?
2 points.
2 points. No, we didn't play well in the All Ireland final at all. We didn't. It was our worst match of the year. But we had got to Cork, beaten Cork the first time they'd been beaten in 74 years. In their home championship, in the championship, these were knockout matches. We came back to Limerick, and we that deadly match against Clare, like, which came down to the wire. Carey's pint, which we go down to history, like, is one of the best scores that didn't even get acknowledged, even to be mentioned as throughout the year. Like, when put Clare, they were Munster and Ireland champions out of the championship. They were recognised like that. We got any credit for that. We came back to Tipperary in the Munster final. So there were 3 matches now, I'd say, in the heyday of hurling in the modern game, in the game in the 90s, which is now stating that it was a very high time for hurling. The experts would tell us that it was a good period for the game of hurling. So we went on anyway, and we drew with Tipperary. Luckily, to draw out of Limerick, didn't play well the first half, 10 points on half time. Carlow went back to the match, they were the head again, and in the dying seconds, we said Frankie Carroll scored 2 points, and we drew the match. There was luck attached to that as well, and I'll acknowledge that. We went to Cork the following Sunday. They wouldn't play in Limerick. We wouldn't play in Thurles. They wouldn't pass for the venue, and so we decided to go to Cork, and we had a decisive victory over Cork. Now we beat a good Antrim team in the semi-final, and we had Jack Boatman to say then, the presence of GLA, that these fellas now were fellas that had given their blood in their veins for nearly, 3 or 4 years now, the most, although there was no players coming all the time into the game of hurling, and he could tell us about it at a function with no passion, So there's something radically wrong. Like,
talk about knowing your audience, like, you're talking to a group of people who've lost to Ireland in 3 years, like, it's
so we talk about people out of touch, but but the position about it is that it shows you how out of touch Croke Park is. President, he's the head of the organisation, and you can see that is the. Now, I'm not saying that any of them have covered themselves in glory since, but like, the thing about it is that you must respect. We're amateur. This is an amateur code. These lads under my watch, like at county level, these lads we were really and truly struggling with backup. There was no huge sponsorship, only a very meaning, it was welcome. And we had to. I was questioned about that actually. By the head sponsor, Mr. Trevor Shaw of Shaw's almost nationwide. So that itself would be what a podcast in itself.
Yes, we mentioned earlier about the rivalry impact as well in Ballybrown, and a few weeks before the '74 All Ireland, that kind of manifested itself in a club game. Yourself and Richie Binnis had a bit of a clash, and he got suspended. Did that kind of affect things probably in the lead up in the squad for the All Ireland? Would you say, or
no? I wouldn't think so. No, Paddy. Well, the background to that was there was huge rivalry there. And you see, unfortunately, like, from I suppose. They had the soul of the game in the 90s, in the 70s, and the 80s, and I could go back to the 60s and 50s because I'm like hurling since I was able to hit nearly at the mark. And the rivalry and the inter-parish rivalry and the inter-club rivalry, that's gone, you see. And that, in actual fact, I suppose, when you look back at it, was the real passion. And I have blamed it actually ourselves for, we spent our nowadays Hurling, like fighting wars instead of matches, you know, and like when you see, I mean, that that what's happening now, I mean, like there's no rivalry now. It's only a kind of a show now. It's a kind of a picture. It's like more of a game. It's more like a stage job, like, you know, a stage managed situation. But the rivalries that were between Ballybrown and Patrickswell was absolutely crucial. You could feel it there, you know, before the matches. Now, the rivalry was that they were able to beat us if we had the teams in the actually at times that you struggled against, and we always struggled against Patrickswell. They were a superior Hurling team to us. They were based in families, and you know, in a small area, like, I mean, in the village, you know, and they had really great determination, and they had also very good mentors, you know. I mean, they had to be good when my father was a founder member by the same token, you know. But anyway, but they built up a huge, like, I mean, look at the amount of county championships they have won. Like, I think they have won the same as a hand back in the heyday of or maybe more now. And I'm not one for statistics, although it doesn't mean a whole lot in the day. But as an example to the question you've asked, the rivalries were fierce. And I saw people in the Ballybrown dressing room before matches. And as I said, I would be a driver. I was nearly captain all the time, like, of the team. I suffered getting physically sick going out to play. I'm afraid of kind of a fear, like, you know, I mean, and we had one brilliant hurler, like we say. I mean, like, he was a county class hurler. I mean, Pat Forty was his name. And I saw him one day, you know, I mean, the way they were tough and they'd intimidate you, and they'd really walk you into the ground and they'd walk on top of you when they had you on the ground, you know. So, like, you had to be unbelievably strong-willed, and, you know, that was one of their strengths. You see, they would definitely, like, and they played to that. So when we played them, like, I mean, our wins over them would be very little, you know. Now, that particular match we said, like, that you mentioned there, and that has been mentioned in recorded since. What actually happened was we played Clare in the Munster final in the week before in Tullis, and I mean, Richie was centre forward right now. Richie, I class him as one of the best hurlers Limerick has ever produced. By the same token, he was a match winner. He had everything. He was hard, he was tough, he had physique, he had pace, he had skill in tight, and he was a deadly free taker and an all-rounder. Top class. I would rate him as one of, if you ask me a question, who would I rate in the top 10 of Limerick hurling in my time and before my time, Richard Bennett would be number 1 or 2. He'd be top class. So he had gone on record as being on the 10 Tullis. He went in the spree and he knocked and go slow on the father Brian now. And he had scored, I think, two goals and so many points, and he was throwing the ball over people's heads, and he had a kind of an alley shuffle before nearly, you know, I mean, before alley, like. So Grant, let me won that match well in Tullis, and we came on to our local domestic championship the following week, and we played Ballybrown, and Patrickswell were playing the gate grounds. Of course, that time people would go alone to see what was going to happen. Now, in 9 times out of 10, what was going to happen was Ballybrown would be beaten, and be beaten reasonably by maybe 6 or 7 points, and often maybe more. So at that particular time, anyway, I was centre back down in my position of Ballybrown. Richie was centre forward, and Richie was a handful at any time, but I would be able for Richie. Like, I mean, I'd be given as good as I got, and he wouldn't be getting anything soft. That day, that night, he had he wasn't having this. Patrick were winning well, and he wasn't having he wasn't getting any man to match awards anyway. He had scored a few points and frees, and so they were winning well. And the match was in 10 minutes to go. And Richie went back to the half-back line and called for the ball. He had no business back to the half-back line. The match was over. And he had no business doing what he did. And he actually has admitted that since in writing, that he was acting, I won't say what he said, but that's what he was doing. So he thought that he was going to bring the ball to me, throw it over my head, do an alley shuffle, and bang it into the back of the net like he'd done Tullis. But Richie wasn't going to throw any ball over my head. I mean, in any forum, at any Crow Park, no matter what teammates do that, because it was unnecessary, and it was derogatory, and it was give him the two fingers, which he wasn't going to do, and which he wasn't going to be allowed to do. So in the confrontation, Richie ended up outside through the wire outside in the seats, and there was all hell and bedlam broke out, and there was the talk about always known matches, and the match that you saw from Innis between ourselves and Castle, that was only like a tea party in comparison to what happened that night, because the king was gone, the king was down, he was after being taken out by me. I was the bad guy, of course, naturally, and we know when that Ireland final was going to happen. Richie, they could do it. Well, I said to me, looked as it was, they could do it with me. I mean, Richie had to play him, so whatever he gets, I get to see him.
All fair, love and war.
All fair, love and war. And I wasn't even worried about Crow Park, because I was only looking at what was in front of me. As the old cliche says, one game at a time, we worry about Crow Park when the day came.
Yeah, you're in a plea-bargaining situation at that stage, like.
Yes, that's right.
So, but I suppose it just goes to show the intensity of the club rivalry at the time, and like there's no personal issues between you before the game and that. Like, you just got on with it, like. No
personal. No, well, I wouldn't be flavour the month with them, but I wouldn't bother me. But there is no. It's about the actual. You're looking at a period of time. That was the actual code the GA survived, and not only survived but gained that. It was a rivalry. It was, I mean, when I think about it, a war now that we fellas talking about matches, I said, God, I'm talking about his only odd cliches. Like, I mean, that was the kernel of the GA, and you see, that was one aspect. And no, I'll tell you something, things happened that shouldn't have happened. And what the end of that, if it happened now, but it would be, they'd be nearly in jail. So I mean, like, at the same time, that was what happened. That was the way the thing. We know nothing else, and it was the same in nearly every county. It was local rivalry. It was, I mean, and it was a lot of it came down nearly to even the daily stage to faction fight.
Well, I remember reading that the chairman of the Limerick City Board was saying afterwards that he didn't suspend you for longer, otherwise you would have gone and won the thing, like,
Yeah, with the chairman of the City Board, you would expect a whole lot more anyway, I mean, at a particular time, but we were before many boards in our time,
But I suppose you saw the other side of an All-Ireland final in '74. I suppose on the day, it was a reversal of '73, like, and
it was, and like that day, I mean, the '74 was a huge disappointment. We conceded a few very soft goals, and we met a Kilkenny team. Of course, in '73 as well, Kilkenny were shot a few other stars, like, and that has to be mentioned as well. So we got to rub the green there. But really and truly, the big game in '73 was the one in Thurles, the one against Tipperary in the Munster final. That was the same standard and the same status as the Clare match in '96 in Limerick. It was really down to the wire stuff. So they were great games. They were great. I mean, I enjoyed my inter-county hurling. My years at Limerick, I enjoyed them. Every you were all the time. I mean, like, learning, and you were all the time benefiting your club by having that, performing at a higher level. It gave you a bit of momentum when you came back to the club. It also let you as a man. So you had to maybe defend yourself at all times against all comers, because you had to like the gun fighter, like he always wants. He has to be very careful. There's always someone to take him out, and I found that. I mean, like, in my career as well, and I often say jokingly, that's why on the maths I have, and that's why I'm crippled.
Hope you enjoyed part 1, guys. Tune in next week for part 2, where Tom will be discussing his time as Limerick hurling manager and the various battles on and off the pitch he had over the 4 years. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notifications bell here on YouTube so you're notified when my next video goes live. For audio only, go to Podbean or Spotify. The links for these, and also the links to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, are in the video description. Thanks, and see you next week on the Parleo Padre podcast. Good night. God bless.